Most people believe they want to be seen, but in truth, they only want to be admired. They want recognition without revelation. They want to be loved without being known. To be truly seen is the most terrifying experience the ego can endure, because to be seen is to be exposed, not just in virtue, but in imperfection. It is to be witnessed in the fullness of one's humanity. The modern mind confuses visibility with intimacy. It displays itself endlessly, yet remains unseen. It shares everything, yet reveals nothing. Because what it fears most is not the gaze of others, but the encounter with its own naked self. When someone looks at you with true presence, without judgment or agenda, something ancient stirs inside. The defenses begin to tremble. The masks feel heavy. The false self starts to lose shape. This is why authenticity feels like danger. For the persona, the mask you wear to survive, exposure is death. It was created to protect the child from rejection, humiliation, and abandonment. It learned early which parts of you were safe to show and which had to be buried. Every act of pretending was a form of self-preservation. You hid your anger to stay lovable. You hid your tears to appear strong. You hid your truth to belong. And so the split began. Now, as an adult, you long for love. But what you truly seek is not love itself. It is permission to exist without disguise. And yet, each time you approach that possibility, terror arises. Because the same part of you that craves authenticity still remembers the cost of it. The psyche carries memory not only in thought but in energy. When you felt unseen, mocked, or shamed for your truth, your body recorded it as danger, and that memory became identity. So when someone begins to see through your mask, the body does not feel safety, it feels threat. You may withdraw, sabotage, or perform. Not because you lack confidence, but because the nervous system still believes that visibility equals rejection. This is why intimacy fails for so many. Not because of incompatibility, but because being seen reawakens old wounds of invisibility. You are not afraid of the other person. You are afraid of the parts of you they make visible. People chase connection but flee from exposure. They want to be understood but not uncovered. They want to be loved for who they are, yet spend their lives proving they are someone else. The greatest tragedy of the modern soul is that it confuses performance with presence. It seeks belonging through conformity, approval, and image. But belonging cannot be found through image. Belonging is born when truth is safe. The fear of being seen is the fear of rejection, but on a deeper level, it is the fear of annihilation. Because if your persona is all you know, then losing it feels like death. The real self, long buried, feels foreign. You cannot return to what you do not remember. This is why the process of individuation begins with discomfort. When you start revealing your authentic self, the false identities crumble. And what remains feels uncertain, raw, and exposed. But this exposure is not weakness. It is awakening. It is the beginning of wholeness. When you hide parts of yourself, you fragment. The energy it takes to maintain those fragments becomes anxiety, fatigue, and disconnection. You may call it burnout, depression, or loneliness, but it is the exhaustion of pretending. In therapy, I observed that healing begins the moment one is seen without judgment. It is not technique that heals. It is the gaze of understanding, the mirror that says you exist. You are allowed. When this happens, the psyche relaxes. The shadow steps forward. The self begins to integrate. To be seen is to allow all that you have hidden to stand in the light, not to be fixed, but to be witnessed. Because what is witnessed can finally belong. People often ask, why do I fear vulnerability? The answer is simple, because vulnerability destroys illusion. It removes control. It demands honesty. And honesty threatens the identity that was built upon adaptation. But the illusion cannot sustain life. It keeps you alive, but not awake. The longer you live behind a mask, the more the mask begins to suffocate you. If you wish to understand why you are afraid of being seen, look at the moments in childhood when visibility brought pain, when your emotions were too much, when your truth was dismissed, when you learned that love must be earned. Those moments created the equation, truth equal to danger. And so you buried it. But what is buried does not die. It waits. Every relationship that touches you deeply awakens that waiting. You will feel drawn to those who mirror your hidden self. At first, it feels magnetic, divine, destined, but soon fear emerges, because what they awaken in you is precisely what you tried to bury. This is the paradox of intimacy. The closer you come to being loved truly, the more your wounds will protest. Love becomes both medicine and mirror. It heals and exposes. To overcome this fear, you must learn to tolerate visibility, to allow small moments of being seen without collapsing into defense. It begins with honesty toward yourself. To stop performing goodness, intelligence, confidence, and meet what is beneath. The work is not to make the mask disappear overnight, but to loosen it gently. Each time you tell the truth instead of pleasing, you reclaim power. Each time you show your sadness instead of smiling through it, you return to integrity. Each time you risk being misunderstood, you strengthen authenticity. Wholeness is not found through control. It is found through courage. The courage to stand unguarded. The courage to be known. The courage to let the eyes of another fall upon your truth and stay open. Do not confuse being seen with being liked. Not everyone will understand your depth, but understanding is not required for liberation. Freedom begins the moment you no longer hide. When you reveal your truth and survive it, the body learns that visibility is safe. The nervous system rewrites its memory. You stop performing. You start living. The fear of being seen is the final barrier between the false self and the real one. Beyond it lies peace, the quiet knowing that you are enough, even when exposed. When you can stand in your own truth without needing to be perfect, love changes form. It becomes less about being chosen and more about being known. Because when you are known, love can finally reach you. To be seen is to return to the world as yourself, to stand in light without armor, to say, "Here I am," and let that be enough. And in that moment, when the eyes of the world no longer define you, when you no longer hide from your own gaze, you realize something profound. You were never afraid of being seen by others. You were afraid of seeing yourself.